We should be live, but that should not be the screen that is present.
Are we live?
We should be live.
Oh boy.
I wonder if that's going to be at the beginning. Oh, well. Wow. Actually, I'm just going to restart the stream. I might. I think it should be okay.
Let me look at the stream.
Yeah. Or try to rewind it real quick. Okay, perfect. We're fine. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic. Episode 21. That's right, episode 21.
21.
I haven't gotten confused at all. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And today we're going to be talking about the episode Smells Like Trouble of Dragon Ball Season 2. Now, this one, we originally anticipated not to have very much to say, but I think we're going to have more than we thought.
Possibly.
Just a
Possibly.
bit. The fight itself, of course, we can get through pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's not the most savory topic that we've covered. But welcome back, everyone. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I don't think we have any addendums today, do we?
I don't remember any, no.
One announcement that we do need to make is that next week we will be off. Owl, myself, will be gone. Out of town for a week. So I will not be here. We'll not do a stream next week. However, a really big and exciting Myth and Meaning is coming up this Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, it's going to be just a little bit longer than you're used to.
At any rate, let's go ahead and continue with the episode. So, we see the first thing that we're seeing here is the end of that elimination round. Goku and Krillin are happy to go and celebrate after getting through the elimination round. Now, I'm curious, Brok, is there any... And they're looking for Master Roshi, and I think that's a poignant part of it. Do you have any thoughts on that, let's say?
Well, they haven't been able to interact with Roshi yet after they made it through their first, step up the hierarchy. And they're representing him, right? They're in his clothes. So, the first thing that they would want to do is to interact with Roshi and, basically get to say, yeah, I represented the Turtle School and won the elimination round, right?
What about mythologically, though?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, what I'm getting at is the reason that they're seeking out Roshi is because he is the judge, right, that they've set to aspire them. When you have an ideal, right, that's a judge. And Roshi right now, the spiritual father, the motive being he adopts is more powerful than the boys. And so it's something that they're striving to be. So they're seeking out that spirit of the judge from Roshi to affirm what they've done.
Right. Yeah, I think that the clothes are sort of the middle point between the two, right? That sort of idea that it's like, I want to be judged against this ideal, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
With him being the ideal that they're trying to represent.
And so well, hold on. All right. So let's quickly talk about the setup of this is the first time we've seen the arena. But we're going to get back to Roshi in just a minute. I did briefly want to talk about this, though, because it shows the demon motif there, the hierarchy, right? You have that kind of pyramid shape in the middle going towards that banner, which is the Tenkaichi Bodokai banner, and you have the crowds there. Now, I think earlier you said you wanted to touch more on the significance of the demons when we saw them on stage, so... I'll go ahead and let you speak, Brok.
Well, it kind of ties into what I had been talking about before with the idea that you have the sort of like gargoyles and demons on the margins of, you could say, like religious buildings, right? And on the edges of religious texts, there's this sort of representation of, and acknowledgement of a boundary, and then having some representation of the monstrous there facing outward, right? I think gargoyles perched facing outward from a building, right? And I think that, to me, it looks like a stage up in front of a temple, right? The temple being the representation of like a holy mode of being judged by sort of a construct of that, right? So this is a display in front of that where you can see the gargoyles facing out. It's like this is a display directly to it.
Right. Chris Somber, we did mention the demons last week, but we haven't seen the arena, and I think Brock wanted to mention it within the arena.
Right. Well, that's the reason that I think that it's there, like up against the edge of the arena, right? It's like this is as close to being within the boundary of this temple as we can get. So we're up on the edge of the boundary. We're up against the edge of the margin, trying to enter, the temple kind of representing that step up in a mode of being, wanting to enter that.
Right, and ultimately they come before, right? It's kind of overcoming that negative spirit that allows the contestants to become the number one under the heavens, right? And that which, and this is kind of what we touched on before, but that which is heavenly can dominate and control the demonic. Kind of like what Brock was saying with the gargoyles on cathedrals, right? Those you wouldn't think they would be there, but it is because the heavenly is such a higher order that demons are nothing in the eyes of, let's say, God.
Right. It's definitely a separation point there, right? To say like this can be delineated away from and into a designation of a margin, right?
Right. But let's go ahead and get back to Roshi. So he says when he meets back up with Bulma, of course, we don't know yet, do we? I mean, we can kind of puzzle it out.
We've intuited.
Right. That Roshi and Jackie Chun are the same person.
Because
you
of
guys
his
probably
absence
know
in the
that
last
as well.
episode. They called it out in the show, right?
Right. And so he meets back up with Bulma and the gang, and they let Roshi know that all the boys passed the elimination round. And he says, that's one load off my shoulders. What do you think he means by that, Brock?
That it's one load off his shoulders that they passed the elimination round. He's basically saying that he hasn't failed them, right? That he's relieved to see that that his training was worth at least that much for them. That's sort of how I take that, right? So it's sort of a relief to him that because it seems he hasn't taken a student in a long time.
Okay, interesting. See, I was thinking of more what he would have to do had they not passed the elimination round, let's say. They would, because that would, and what would happen too if a person had a lot of respect for a school or a philosophy of thought, and then for it to not get that person very far might be a little discouraging, wouldn't you think?
Right.
So this is a load off of his shoulders because there is no need to like go back and remediate on the reasons why, let's say.
Well, I want to expand on it just a little bit because you can see that it also has to do with responsibility, right? So imagine Roshi as that sort of spiritual father, right? A spirit of the father.
Yeah, he has to make
embodying.
sure that the boys know.
That spirit inherently takes on the responsibility that's necessary to take on to support, you could say, society or the status quo, right? As far as people are able to imagine the spirit of the father, right? It takes on all that responsibility. And so when he sees that the boys are able to take as much responsibility as it would take in their character to transcend that hierarchy, he's actually like,
let me put it this way.
There's some responsibility.
Right. Well, let me
off
put it
my
this way.
shoulders as
Let me
the
put it
spirit
this
of the
way.
father.
It's basically, in this scenario, it is Roshi realizing that neither Goku nor Krillin are Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Their sacrifices have been accepted. And so that's one sacrifice or one worry that he would have to further work with them on to that's no longer an issue.
Right. He's seeing that they are at least virtuous enough to.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting line.
Yeah.
It's just very subtle but meaningful. But then what does Roshi do? And actually, I think this is there's a significant point to this, but I'll let us arrive to it in conversation. So then Roshi tells Bluma that he's got her a shirt as a souvenir, and all he wants in return is a little pafu, to which she assaults him.
It's great. It's that sort of being the spirit that he is, the temptation that he constantly has embodied over and over and over, right? Basically the judgment on Bulma's character that keeps on manifesting in front of her.
The temptation of Bulma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why does he do it? Why does he do this?
To test her.
Okay. See, I think he does it to draw attention away from his deception.
To draw attention away from his deception.
He just met up with them, and they're like, "Where have you been?"
Oh, he's strategically playing into it.
Yeah. He knows his own spirit. That's the thing. And that's actually, I think, a reason why his eyes are open there. Like, he's aware of what he's doing. But it helps him disguise his intentions towards the boys, which is necessary at this time. When it's not necessary, and we'll see this later on in the show, when it's not necessary, Roshi doesn't actually act perverted until you get to like later on, like the movies and Super.
Right.
But we'll get there. I mean, not to Super, but we'll get, and not to the movies. Anyway, moving on. We won't get there. We won't get there at all. All right. So we see the whole gang is gathered here, and the 8 semifinalists are asked to go to the main hall. I really have this as just a flow for what's happening in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's significant as well that Yamcha's not here.
Why do you think that?
I think Yamcha's not here because, like we've said in the past, he's tunnel visioning right now. And he's not really... The spirit of his being is not in the right place. It should be here. In fact, there's like a space right here. Oops. There's like a space right there where he should be.
Yeah, just right, essentially between Goku and Krillin.
Right. And
or we've got Blue Jeans guy there.
I guess, yeah, he's our stand-in Yamcha. But that's the thing, and that's one of the reasons Yamcha starts veering off the path so badly is because his mode of being right now is he thinks it's the best way, and he is ignoring all other paths in front of him.
It's true, and he is blind to the wisdom of interacting with everybody else here, right? He's blind. He's not blind to Roshi's disguise soon, right? But he is not willing to, I guess, spend his time interacting with them. He's going to have to fight either Goku or Krillin, and he doesn't know it, but if his intuitions are even right, he's going to have to fight even Master Roshi, right? So
he's pretty serious and focused.
His eyes
right
are
now.
just very close to that, right? Because he could be learning anything just by interacting with any of these, and then there's of course Bulma, who just wants his attention.
Just the way that he's going about it, right? Being so single-mindedly worrying about winning that he's not
right
with his friends. But let's move on. Enough talking trash about Yamcha.
Enough shitting on Yamcha.
He gets enough of it. And so immediately after the boys leave, Roshi's out of there as well. And that's one of the reasons why I think he strategically is doing what he was doing, is because even still shows the bandage there on his beard, right, to remind you of that incident. Because, I mean, now they're not going to suspect that he's Jackie Chun. That's not going to lead them to suspect he's Jackie Chun.
Right.
I just wanted to mention that here, and how he kind of Batmans away.
Yeah, he's just like all about misdirection.
Entirely. And that's the thing. The Tenkaichi Budokai is not a time for Roshi to rest. And I think that's an important part for the master archetype that is not really expounded upon, right? Sometimes let's say the old wise master is passive. Sometimes he's not. But when the challenge of spirits happens, the master is not just supposed to sit it out, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important commentary.
Well, I mean, you see that get represented, let's say, in martial arts style films too, where it's like, oh, okay, the call to the, to the master, right? In that sort of like, oh, okay, it's real. It's always sort of this thing that I've seen like in fighting films, where it's like, oh, the master is actually going to have to come and defend this area or defend a person or something like that, and then then it's serious, right? It's like, so whenever the master is called upon, they have to be able to walk the walk, right?
Well, yeah, but not only that, they have to walk the walk when it's not them that's challenged. Like in this instance, Roshi's walking the walk with he has no intention of he's not trying to win so that he can win the Budokai. He doesn't care. Right. He is there to prevent the boys, and obviously we'll talk more about that from winning. But here he's still walking the walk for the sake of the boys, and I think that's
right.
what
This is a case where it's necessary.
The master
too, right?
needs to do, and I think it's a commentary on that, because let's take an example like let's take Star Wars. So in Star Wars, I would say Obi-Wan takes kind of an active role as well, but it's not direct. Here, I think it's a little more direct on the influence of how the pupil is developed. But I don't want to draw too many comparisons, because I don't want to say... I'm not saying Goku is Luke Skywalker or anything. Well, let's go on. All right, so then we see them all go into the main hall, and we see the gang there. We got a very surprised Girin. And then we meet Bacterian for the first time. Good old Bacterian.
Is that Goku saying that guy is tough?
No, that's Yamcha saying that, because Yamcha just knows about all these martial artists.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's like, oh, like there's always the expository type character, right? That's like, I know about this fighter.
And yeah, it's usually the jobber, Yamcha. And so Bacterian is representative, let's say, of a spirit different from all the rest of the fighters. I like that all of these fighters are precisely different, right? You have Girin, representative of that kind of bestial nature. He is a monster, right? You have Yamcha, who we've talked about, the masculine, incomplete, immature masculine. You have the spirit of Krillin, which we've talked about.
Well, Yamcha's the lad, right? But he's like the spirit of the lad, the puer, right? That's why part of why I think puer is named puer. I don't know if we've recorded saying that, but puer meaning the lad or the young man,
right?
Eager.
True. We have Krillin, which is we had discussed previously, and I think Brock's position was that Krillin is a reflection of Goku's spirit.
Yeah, he's kind of a reflection of Goku in general. He's a companion to Goku, like an extension of Goku.
Okay, sure. We'll take that as far. I don't want to break down into it now, but we'll discuss that more, I think, when we have the next Tenkaichi Budokai, when it's Krillin versus Goku.
Yeah, I think
we'll be able to talk about that.
we
a lot.
build to that. Yeah.
We'll build to that. We have Goku, obviously. Nam, who we actually don't really know too much yet, but he is that spirit of selflessness, right? So he's gotten pretty far because that's a pretty powerful spirit.
Yeah, he's like a spirit of self-sacrifice for a noble goal.
Mm-hmm. We have Ranfan, which is the perversion of female empowerment, which is powerful, pretty powerful. Got her this far, and we have Roshi, and we'll talk more about them as we get more into them. But Bacterian himself. What say you on what Bacterian is to represent?
Well, Bacterion is relying upon how unsociable he is and how unpleasant he is. So he's leaning on unpleasantness to wield as much power, let's say, as someone who conformed to pleasantries and then stood on the merits of their technique. So the first thing I would say about him is that he leans on unpleasantness or something closer to monstrous, right? Some being on the margin outside of what's socially acceptable, as leaning on that as a crutch to win.
Right. It's the exploitation of the exploitation and like the what am I looking for? The adversarial spirit towards the societal norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's wielding that. It's similar to, let's say, someone in debate
Arguing in bad faith.
I wouldn't say arguing in bad faith as much as I would like using a lot of, let's say, ad hominem attacks.
Sure, yeah.
Being vitriolic, right? Being obstinate to the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that, and this is and that's what you had to do. Like, if someone's never taken a shower, I mean, that person's been obstinate. Someone has obviously told them to take a shower in their life.
Obviously.
But it's that contrarian spirit too that is being wielded by Bacterian, and actually it's significant that it is a contrarian spirit, but right, I think it's akin to something like that. And so it is especially offensive to Goku. Why? I think that explanation actually helps get that out, right? The contrarian spirit is especially offensive to Goku.
Right. There's a dishonesty to it, right? Because it's not standing on a specific person's virtue as much as it's just siding with the contrary nature to wisdom, right? You could say that society is founded on the wisdom of the people that come before. He is not adhering to those social customs. He is going against wisdom for the sake of going against wisdom. So, I mean, to someone who's wise
and
not intelligent
that,
like Goku,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That stinks. Literally stinks to Goku, right? But
and that's why he stinks.
Right.
See? We didn't think we were going to get that far in this episode.
Well, there's a little bit to say there.
We've already gone 25 minutes. You thought it was going to be 20 minutes.
Hey, it's like you go into it with the premise. This is the one where they fart and Krillin remembers he doesn't have a nose. I was like, oh, we can say a little bit about that.
Well, there's more.
But apparently, there's a little bit more to get into.
And so then we have all of them here, and they're measuring themselves up on the hierarchy, which I like that picture of the hierarchy there with a character pointing at it. You can see it as a pyramid, right? You can draw the pyramid down, and you can see the top of the hierarchy is the champion under heaven. And I just wanted to mention that this hierarchy is the hierarchy of hierarchies, because I actually should have put, instead of, I should have put 3 pictures, and I should have put the 4 other preliminary round matchups, and then this one. Because this is the hierarchy of hierarchies, and I just think that would better explain it. but even still, this idea of the hierarchy is actually higher than them anyways. But they draw to see who gets it, and that begins this process, which becomes kind of a tradition in Dragon Ball.
Yep.
You have anything to add there?
No, I think that's a good way of putting it, that hierarchy of hierarchies, or you could say a game of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of like delineating a mode of being that is a commonality amongst modes of being by which
That are successful.
By which you succeed.
And all of these modes of being are pretty much different. I would say the closest would be Krillin and Goku, probably. Or would you say Goku and Master Roshi?
The strongest?
The most similar.
Or the most similar? I mean, we've got those three automatically because they've learned from Roshi. And then Yamcha is close because Yamcha's fought against Goku, and generally we know his power level. Outside of that.
What's your power level? All right, let's continue. So it turns out that Krillin is the lucky one to get matched up against Bacterian-san.
Bacterian-san.
And of course I had to get this Google Eye Krillin here who's got sharp teeth for some reason. But he's not very happy about it. And it's because Krillin's spirit, let's say, before he met Roshi, would have been very susceptible to a contrarian.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, Krillin embodies some contrarian
which
techniques.
Is why he'd be weak to it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, when he first meets Goku, where he's very much just like almost trying to prop himself up against Goku to look better, right? It's like, oh, look how undignified Goku is.
Right, but at least he's not just being the opposite
Mm-hmm.
for obstinate's sake.
Not for obstinate's sake, no.
Right, because like when Krillin decides, let's say, to run down the path with the trees, he's not doing that because he's trying to be obstinate. He's doing that because he thinks it'll be a shortcut.
Right, he's not trying to go against the spirit of the training as much as he's just trying to take an easy way out.
Right.
Right.
So, they are getting ready to get matched up, and the announcer tells everyone to wait their turn here as he calls them for their match. Goku asks for some food, and he asks, "Are you really gonna eat before a match?" And in the dub, I like them both. I like it in the dub and in the sub because both get the point across. It's the same sentiment for once.
Mm-hmm.
In the dub, he says, "I will eat." In this, he says, "I'm gonna eat." It's a little more crude, but that's fine. It doesn't even matter. And so we'll see how that manifests in a bit. But Goku, I just wanted to point out the sub and dub relation and Goku's necessity for sustenance before a battle of spirits. It's interesting because other characters mentioned, like, I can't eat right now. It's interesting that only Goku's spirit is nourished not only by being compared and challenged by other modes of being, but it also can be nourished before those challenges, like right before those challenges, and be bolstered. And I think that's because the hero, which is Goku's spirit, really is an embodiment there, or let's say can be invigorated by bravery, which can happen right before a challenging moment. The other spirits here, maybe not so much. Like the wise master, you don't really invoke the spirit of the wise master by being brave.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also
it's something like that. I think I'm trying to verbalize it there.
Well, I was also kind of thinking about it from the point of view of like, so Goku and Krillin learn all that they're using here on the cycle of working up an appetite and eating on their daily work, right? Where they work to get things done. And I think that this translation of work comes up to, it's almost like, it's like noble work to be fighting against the things that Goku would be fighting against whenever he's fighting, right? And so it's like he takes the nourishment he needs for a good day's work of doing essentially the Lord's work, right? It's like, well, when you're on the path, your conflicts are just you doing what is needed to be done, right?
Why is Goku the only one that can eat before a fight?
Why is Goku the only one that can?
Yeah.
I mean, didn't Krillin as well before?
No, Krillin's too nervous.
Well, Goku's not nervous, first of all, on that front, right? Because
that's kind of what I was getting at as to why, because his is the spirit of the hero, and the spirit of the hero, he's the only one that represents the spirit of the hero, and therefore it must be something unique to the spirit of the hero that is able to be nourished. And I think because of that challenge that is apparent, it is that bravery that encourages the hero. Go on, though.
I mean, so I do agree with that. I think that there's that element of it. I'm trying to see how I want to tie it together. It's like,
it's a complex idea.
well, Goku's comparing himself against himself in the way that he carries himself, right? There's very much this attitude in the true like way of Tao thinking, which is very much like you're comparing yourself against yourself so that you're honest with your progress, right? So that if you're going to be about betterment for the sake of self-betterment, then you know that you're the best that you could be because you're really comparing yourself against yourself and the effort that you put in. And since Goku's been so forthright and he's not dishonest with himself in that sense, right? He's not disoriented. He's confident enough to eat beforehand. And I say confident, but it's like he doesn't have to be nervous going into this challenge because he knows that he's going to do his best and he trusts himself. Right.
Wouldn't you say there are other characters that feel that way, though?
I don't know. I mean, there's
like, for example, well, we're not gonna we'll get into it when we arrive there. We'll get into more because this iteration will happen multiple times, so we'll talk about it more. I think we can just move on, unless there's a point you need to make.
No, I'm just kind of spitballing on it.
Okay, gotcha. Let's move on. So then we have the announcement of the fights, and we have Bacterian versus Krillin first. So and that was our thumbnail. So I mean, I didn't really think we need to spend too long on it. Well, maybe we can.
It's just a cool pose.
It is a cool pose. The looming nature of Bacterian and Krillin's kind of side eye there, both interesting. But right, then we have the commencement of the semifinals, which actually can be viewed by the public, and we have the dog here. I think this is your first frame.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out the dog here, where there's this like I love like the dog authority, the dog priest, the dog president, like all these iterations of this sort of dog figure that's respected. I think a piece of it has to do with that respect for the more embodied, more beastly nature of what it means to be human, like being very much more towards the unconscious and less egocentric, right? And so there's also the line in the intro that's like, the emptier your head is, the more room there is to fill it with dreams. I think that's in the intro.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about that line, and it's very tied in with that Buddhist thought, right? You're trying to achieve the emptiness of mind. And so we have this dog priest who's just like, one word, woof. And then everyone's like, oh, it's so profound. So I think it's a joke based on that.
Okay. I think that's, and that is actually, isn't that from the Dragon Ball Z
I think it's the Z intro, yeah.
But okay, sure. It's a similar idea.
Sentiment, right?
Sure. Chris Somber says, I think Giran, Goku's first opponent, also eats. Yes, that we'll get to that. That's kind of a different topic because Goku actually eats like right then. Like the guys, he calls the monks over. The announcer calls the monks over, and they like get him some food like right then.
Oh yeah, I gotta think back to that.
Yeah, I mean that just happened. We're gonna see the Girin. What do you even call those? Like the bone in the middle with the meat, like
just haunches of meat.
Haunches of meat. Yeah, there you go. We'll talk about that. I think that's next episode.
Yeah.
But I think that's to represent a kind of a different idea. But we'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
Right, Wolf.
That's all. I just like it. I think it's funny. I think that the dog joke just keeps going.
Oh yeah, there's more. And well,
I don't want to say it's a dog joke. It's
I don't want to say it keeps going because it actually gets diminished over time.
Well, yeah, everything gets diminished over time, though, unfortunately.
Entropy. It's a hell of a drug. So, Bacterian comes in the ring, and Krillin's there, and everyone's like, oh, this is horrible. It smells bad. It's because the spirit which he's adopting, which is that kind of contrarian spirit, let's say, is pretty repugnant to forthright people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the reasons why I think people find preteens and teenagers so repugnant as well.
Right. It's a temptation for demoralization. Right. It's that sort of that adversarial spirit can be demoralizing towards you, even if you're forthright. Like Krillin,
I don't want to say it's adversarial as much as it is, because it's not developed enough to be adversarial. In a way.
True. It's trying to embody that spirit, right, for the sake of it. That's why I call it that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can see that this has Krillin nervous.
To say the least.
So we were talking about, the nervousness. So Krillin he is not happy about this at all.
And when he fights him, he's kind of overwhelmed by the stench.
Right. All of Bacterion's quote-unquote techniques are just him showing off how much he smells bad.
Well, it's offense, right? It's like, how much can I offend your sensibilities to basically make, for him to make his opponent give up.
Right, and this kind of brings up what the test is for Krillin in this fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is
precisely.
I was talking about how Krillin had been a bit of a contrarian towards Goku's mode of being, calling him primitive and calling him basic, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was even on the airplane to get over here, he was embodying a contrarian spirit. And if you notice, after this fight, it doesn't happen anymore.
Oh, and the way the fight ends also represents that too, because what this is a test of, okay, where do your sensibilities really lie, right? And how much are you willing to hang on to them? And then it's also a question of how much do these sensibilities define you, right? So it's a test for Krillin to, and that's why the fight goes the way that it does here, is because this is all about how genuine those sensibilities really are within Krillin, right? And making him confront the idea that the potential weakness in those ideas.
Also that he could give up. No one's going to blame him for giving up.
True.
He has an out. This is an out for Krillin. And it's a tough fight for him, too. I mean, if we see, it was a pungent attack of both mouth and crotch. And Krillin's laid out there.
Right. It's one of those.
And that is to say that the knowledge of the contrarian spirit and that Krillin specifically could adopt it is what lays him out. Goku would probably not have an issue with this fight.
Yeah, like we've talked about before, Goku doesn't
wouldn't, yeah.
mind dropping trow and just taking a piss wherever, right? He doesn't. He's not shamed by encountering something like this. Whereas
And
there's a
that is
bit of
another,
theater there for Krillin.
yeah. That is another point, that it is kind of a humiliating match for Krillin, and it's kind of the ego destruction that he needs.
Yeah, he has to debase himself to engage with Bacterian, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's
And
trying all these like very like kicks and very martial arts attacks, but
right, and there's that sort of egocentric projection that we had talked about with Krillin, right, where he's kind of more persona based, and we're seeing that taken down a notch for him because he has to engage immediately on terms he doesn't want to engage on, right?
right. And as Bacterian, it chokes Krillin as the fight goes on. Let's say that. And this is what do I want to say? This is kind of symbolic of what happens with a contrarian spirit and what it does to you. It cuts off the ability for someone to get out of that mode of being. It's kind of self-replicating in that way. It can choke out the spirit
Yeah, it's trying
that
to.
you are currently
Well,
embodying.
it's literally trying to strangle Krillin's spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And forcing him to. How do you want to word it? It is essentially making Krillin rely on something outside of the realm of his more egocentric view, his more self-conscious view, right? And so he manages to save himself, because he can't be completely defeated by the spirit there, right? And it's just blind malice reaching out at him, right? I mean, he could easily just try to throw him outside of the ring. It's like, no, I'm just going to choke you. And so, of course, Krillin's not just going to be defeated by that, but he.
Right, and let me illustrate this in some more concrete terms. So the contrarian spirit is that which goes against. So if one was to present an opinion, a contrarian spirit would present the opposite opinion. So here is particularly the place, because here is where everyone is presenting their spirit. And this is the contrarian spirit that is being put up against Krillin. Now, what I wanted to say specifically was that the contrarian spirit, like you were saying, it is more malicious. It wants to have that person adopt it rather than just having it claim victory over other spirits, because it already thinks it's better than other spirits. And we kind of see that with Bacterian as well, because he comes through and he like shoves people out of the way and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes a joke about this later, which we can bring back up. But there's that aspect of like, well, there's the saying, it's like, you think your shit doesn't stink. Right?
Exactly.
This is also a bit of that.
And speaking of poop, we have this. Here it is. Breathe it in.
So this is what really lays Krillin down for the count.
This is as close as Bacterian gets to winning, I believe.
It's the silent but deadly attack. Literally, that's the Japanese. The silent but deadly.
Right, and this is the ultimate. It's the ultimate faux pas in so many cultures, and it is that really revealing, ego-busting, gonna embarrass. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, you lose. Imagine competing in a tournament where someone has to say, I lost because I got farted on.
This guy farted on my face so bad.
Right. It's the
that
old.
I lost my chance at all that money.
It's all Bacterian can do. It's the best he's got. And even for that, it's not enough because the stench is all in Krillin's mind. There's no way he can smell it. He ain't got no nose. Now, what do you think? Why is this pointed out? But besides the joke.
I think it's to point out to Krillin that he has the ability and the propensity to act like that in his own way, and that he thinks his shit doesn't stink, right?
Right. And it's kind of indicative of that spirit, right? Not having a nose and being reflective on oneself, right? Those two things come together for the metaphorical reflection on Krillin's self, which allows him to then understand that since he can be like Bacterian, that's nothing. He can easily be Bacterian.
Yeah, it's like I'm at least this person, not,
Not at most.
Not at most. I'm not engaged. Like, if I have to engage on their terms, then I'm more than them, right? Because the spirit is so low.
Right. And so Krillin realizes that it's not just that he wasn't drawn with a nose. Like, that's the thing with everything Toriyama writes. It's not that, it's even the jokes. It's not just that. It's that and.
Well, I just love the way it's drawn, too, there with Goku, like, up above the fight, speaking down to Krillin. Like, this is wisdom from Goku, right?
Above a demon.
Yes.
Yes.
This is the wisdom from Goku hanging up there telling him.
And so now that Krillin knows his strength of spirit, boom, bam, the fight is over.
Right, because he steps above himself, so to speak, right?
Yes. He transcends his current iteration of a hierarchy to do this. He defeats Bacterian, farts on him.
Gives him a fart in the face.
And Bacterian gives up.
Even to Bacterian, someone else's gas is stinky after all.
And there it is, the flies around him. And that's true. Even to the contrarian, that spirit is toxic.
Right.
And so that kind of brings us to the end of that fight. And they celebrate here. There are foes you cannot beat just because you are strong. And that is to say that, there are modes of being which are going to test not just your physical prowess.
Right. There are modes of being that don't stand on their own strength, right? They stand on other methods that you have to be able to engage with.
That's
the mode of the contrarian.
Their own strength, exactly.
Like some modes of being will try to use your strength against you, right?
It's true. And it's not just that your mode of being is strong, but opponents' modes of being can be as varied as there are variations.
They could be so weak that your inability to engage on their level is the only thing that could defeat you.
Or well, no, let's not get into too hypothetical. I was just going to say, if someone who is operating on a higher level debases themselves, it can only look bad for that person.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go ahead and move on. So Goku raises the hand of his best friend Krillin here. Well, actually, I would say right now Bulma's probably Goku's best friend. Or Oolong. No, I don't know. Maybe. Anyways, Krillin
and Goku have been through a lot together now.
It's true. He raises Krillin's hand, and Krillin is the champion. That kind of brings us to the end.
But yeah, I just
and a little bit of Krillin's arc. I think we've uncovered a little bit of Krillin's arc. There are so many people that are like, oh man, there's not good character development in Dragon Ball, but there is. Every character.
This is sort of a. I love that Goku's lifting his hand here, right? Because it's a representation of what has just happened, where Goku is calling down to him, kind of like bringing him up, right?
Well, it's the spirit of the hero acknowledging itself in someone else,
right? And he's being congratulated by Goku here specifically, because this is like
it's just that
exactly.
Yeah. And so that gives us to the end of this. So I think we're done there. But let's go ahead and see what happens next episode, Brock. And this is going to happen in 2 weeks' time. We will see Yamcha versus Jackie Chun.
Versus Jackie Chun. This
We see the lack of pupils there. It gives us a little insight to how this fight might go.
You can also see Yamcha's winding up for a
Rogo Fufu Ken.
It looks like it. His hand is all ready.
Oh man. How crazy. Well, if you liked what you heard, guys, please give us a subscribe, leave us a like, comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And remember, this was Get the Mic episode 21. Smells like trouble. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And we will see you guys next time.